Hello, everyone, and welcome to Easy English Talks podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're going deep on something I know a lot of you are super interested in, reaching fluency in English. And guess what? 2025 is bringing a ton of new tools and approaches to help you get there.
It really is. We're seeing some really exciting developments that make fluency feel much more achievable.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we've got research articles, expert opinions, and our mission is to find the absolute best advice for you. Not just the generic tips, but the specific strategies that can really make a difference for you.
Yeah, exactly. We want to help you find the tools and techniques that work best for you and help you reach your goals.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things we saw in the research is the role of technology in language learning. It's like having a personal tutor on call 24/7.
Right. And it's not like those old basic vocabulary drills. We're talking about sophisticated AI-powered apps like Duolingo and Babbel that can actually make a personalized learning path based on what you're good at and what you need to work on.
Personalized. That sounds way better than just memorizing random lists of words. How do these apps work? I mean, are they really like having a human tutor?
Well, they use algorithms to track your progress, and then they change the lessons based on that. Like if you're having trouble with a certain grammar point, the app will give you extra practice or even explain it in a different way. And the best part is they can actually listen to you speak and give you feedback right away.
Whoa, that's really impressive. It's like having a teacher right there with you as you practice. I know a lot of people listening probably know Duolingo, but what about some of the other apps out there? Any that you think are particularly good?
Well, if you really want to focus on pronunciation, there's ELS Speak. It uses speech recognition to look at your accent and then gives you specific tips. It even breaks down the sounds of English using the International Phonetic Alphabet, the IPA.
IPA. That sounds kind of scary. Is it really important to learn all those symbols? Do we have to be experts in linguistics to be fluent?
No, not at all. But the IPA can be useful, especially if you're having a hard time with sounds that aren't in your native language. It helps you understand how to make the sounds of English and then practice in a smarter way.
Okay, that makes sense. So having a map of English sounds so you know exactly what you need to work on.
Yeah.
What about those virtual reality platforms we keep hearing about? The idea of being immersed in a virtual world where everyone speaks English is really cool.
Virtual reality is definitely a game changer for learning languages. Platforms like Immersion and Monly VR create super realistic scenarios where you can practice conversations. Imagine ordering food in a restaurant, giving a presentation, or just chatting with a friend, all in virtual reality.
Wow, I can see how that would help you get more confident and fluent. Have you tried any of these VR platforms yourself?
I've had a chance to try a few, and it's amazing how real it feels. You're not just listening or repeating, you're using the language in a real, interactive way.
It's like a dress rehearsal for real-life conversations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm imagining myself on the London Underground or ordering a beer at a pub. It sounds fun and effective.
Exactly. It's all about making language learning fun and enjoyable. And that leads us to another key part of fluency immersion through entertainment.
Yeah, I love this idea. Why not make learning part of your everyday life? You can surround yourself with English content instead of always studying textbooks.
There are so many options now. Movies, TV shows, music, podcasts, audiobooks, you name it, there's probably an English version.
So where should a beginner start? Should I be trying to understand Shakespeare or British comedy shows?
You don't have to jump into the hardest stuff right away. Start with something fun and easy. Like if you like sitcom shows like Friends or Modern Family are great for everyday vocabulary and natural conversations.
I think subtitles are a big help too, especially when you're starting out. It's like having a safety net so you don't miss anything important.
Definitely. And you can gradually use them less and less. Start with subtitles in your own language, then switch to English subtitles, and eventually you might not need them at all.
That's actually how I got better at listening. I used to watch everything with subtitles.
Yeah.
Now I understand most things without them. It's amazing how your brain figures out the language.
It really is. Even listening without understanding every word is helpful. It gets you used to the sounds and rhythm of English.
It's like you're absorbing the language without even realizing it. Okay, we talked about movies and TV. What about music?
Music is amazing for learning vocabulary and pronunciation. Plus, it's fun. You can sing along and really get into the sounds.
I remember when I was learning, I used to listen to the same song again and again, trying to figure out the words and sing along. I learned a ton of new words that way.
Don't be afraid to try different genres. You might find new favorites. And if you want more of a challenge, try podcasts or audiobooks. They're great for improving your listening and expanding your vocabulary.
I love podcasts. There are so many different topics, so you can always find something you're interested in, and you can listen while you're doing other things like working out or commuting.
It's like multitasking for language learning. We've talked a lot about passive listening, but eventually you need to actually speak right.
Of course, you can't become fluent just by reading and listening. You have to open your mouth and practice speaking. But that can be scary for some people. It's like stage fright for language.
I get it. It can be intimidating to speak in a new language. But the good news is there are lots of tools and ways to get more confident and improve your speaking.
So how do we get started? What's the first step for someone who wants to get over their fear and start speaking English?
Well, remember those language exchange platforms we talked about? They're perfect for connecting with native speakers who are learning your language.
It's like having a language buddy. I love that. You can practice speaking with each other, learn about each other's cultures, and maybe even make new friends.
Exactly. And these platforms let you text, chat call, or even video chat, so you can practice speaking in lots of different ways.
That's fantastic. It's like having a world of language partners right there on your phone.
Right.
But what about people who are nervous about talking to strangers online?
Start by finding someone who likes the same things you do. If you both love movies, you can talk about your favorite films, and everyone there is learning, so don't worry about making mistakes. Mistakes are actually good for learning.
That's a good point.
Hmm.
You have to be okay with making mistakes and just enjoy the process.
Ah.
What are some other ways to practice speaking besides language exchange?
There's this really cool technique called shadowing. It basically means copying native speakers. You listen to a recording and try to say the exact same thing using the same pronunciation rhythm and everything.
Shadowing. That's new to me. Tell me more.
It helps you internalize the sounds and pattern of English. It's like learning a song by ear. You listen to it over and over, and then you can sing it yourself.
Oh, I see. So I could pick a scene from my favorite movie and try to shadow the actors.
Exactly. Or you can find recordings of speeches, podcasts, or even audiobooks. Just pick something you enjoy. And as you get better, you can make it harder by trying to shadow faster or more complicated speech.
That sounds like a great way to get better at pronunciation and fluency. What about joining online communities or discussion groups?
That's a fantastic idea. There are so many groups online for all sorts of interests. Find something you like and start talking to people. You'll get to practice your English, meet people from all over the world, and learn new things.
That's a great point. You can use English in so many different ways online. It doesn't have to be a formal class. You can chat with friends, play games, comment on social media.
The more you use English in your daily life, the easier it will become. And that's what we really want, right?
For sure. It's not just about passing tests. It's about being able to communicate confidently in the real world. And that's something we'll talk more about in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we'll be back in a bit.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Easy English Talks.
It's good to be back, talking about fluency.
Yeah. We've already talked about so many cool tools and tricks like AI apps and virtual reality.
Right, even how to use movies and music to learn.
But now I want to talk about something that people don't always like to talk about, making mistakes.
Yeah. But
Sure.
you know what? Making mistakes is really important when you're learning.
I remember when I first started learning English, I made some funny mistakes. Like once I told someone I was very boring instead of very bored.
Oh, no. I bet they were confused.
They were. But every time I made a mistake, I learned from it. And I started to feel more confident as I made fewer mistakes.
Exactly. Mistakes show you what you need to work on. They're like little guides.
So we should think of mistakes as helpful feedback, not as failures. We found some good advice in our research about how to use mistakes to learn.
Yeah, one thing that really helps is to record yourself speaking English.
Wait, you mean listen to myself? That sounds kind of awkward.
It might feel weird at first, but it's really helpful. You can hear how you sound to other people and see if you're making any pronunciation or grammar errors.
So it's like having another person listen to you and give you feedback.
Exactly. Once you know what you need to work on, you can focus on those things.
Like a roadmap for your pronunciation and grammar.
And another good tip is to ask other people for feedback. Don't be shy about asking teachers, language partners, or friends who are fluent in English.
That's where those language exchange platforms are great. You have people who are also learning, so you can help each other out.
Everyone makes mistakes. It's totally normal. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just focus on improving.
Yeah, language learning is a long process. You'll have good days and bad days. The important thing is to keep moving forward.
Speaking of moving forward, let's talk about setting goals.
Goals are important. They help us stay focused and motivated.
The research we looked at says that it's best to set SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
So instead of saying, I want to be fluent in English, which is kind of general, A smart goal might be, I want to be able to talk about my hobbies in English for 10 minutes by the end of 3 months.
Exactly. That's a great example. It's specific, you can measure it, it's realistic, it's relevant to you, and it has a deadline. And when you break a big goal down into smaller steps, it feels less overwhelming.
It's like making a to-do list. Checking things off as you go is really satisfying.
Definitely. Our research also says it's good to keep track of your progress. How do you like to do that?
I like to use language learning apps that show your progress. It's motivating to see your progress visually.
You could also keep a journal. Write down new words, you learn thoughts about conversations, or just your overall experience. It helps you stay organized and see how far you've come.
I like that. It's like a diary of your language learning journey.
And remember, the most important thing is to practice regularly. Even 15 minutes a day can make a big difference over time.
We talked about a study that showed that even short bursts of practice are helpful. It's good to know that every little bit counts.
For sure. And try different learning methods. See what works best for you and keep things interesting.
Let's switch gears and talk about something else that's important. Cultural immersion.
Ah, yes. You can't separate language from culture. Understanding the culture helps you understand the language better.
When I was learning English, I focused so much on grammar and vocabulary. But then I realized that things like idioms, humor, and social customs are important too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And our research suggests some great ways to learn about English-speaking cultures, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Like what?
I'm curious.
You could try reading books, listening to music, or learning about the history and traditions of English-speaking countries.
I've been listening to some British podcasts lately. It's interesting to hear different accents and ways of speaking.
Movies and TV shows are great too. They give you a glimpse into the culture, the humor, and daily life.
I've learned a lot of slang from watching American sitcoms.
Yeah.
It's like a fun way to learn about the culture.
You could also go to events where people speak English, like meetups, webinars, or concerts.
It's all about finding opportunities to use English in real-life situations.
Yeah.
Even ordering a coffee in English can be a cultural experience.
That's true. And sometimes the best learning happens in unexpected moments. One time I was in a bookstore in New York, and I started talking to the cashier about a book. We ended up talking for ages about all sorts of things. It was a really cool experience.
That's a great example. It shows that cultural immersion is about more than just learning facts. It's about connecting with people, sharing experiences, and seeing the world in new ways.
It's about experiencing the diversity of the English-speaking world. So what are the main things we learned in this part of our deep dive?
We learned that mistakes are good for learning, setting goals keeps us motivated, and learning about the culture makes our language learning richer.
And there's still more to come. In the last part of this episode, we'll talk about even more advanced strategies for becoming fluent in English.
We'll be right back.
Stay with us. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into fluency in English.
We've come a long way already.
We've talked about tech mistakes, goals, even how to learn from culture.
But we saved some of the best tips for last.
So get ready to level up your fluency, because we're about to unlock the secrets to mastering English in 2025.
Let's do it.
We talked a lot about practicing, but how do you make sure you're practicing in a way that really helps you improve? That's where deliberate practice comes in.
Deliberate practice is all about focusing on the areas where you need to get better and challenging yourself.
So instead of just watching a movie, I could pick a scene, really pay attention to the dialogue, and try to shadow the actors to improve my pronunciation.
Right. It's about having specific goals for your practice, breaking down difficult skills into smaller parts, and asking for feedback to see what you need to work on.
It's like finding your weaknesses and turning them into strengths.
Another important strategy is to use different learning methods. We talked about lots of resources and techniques, but the key is to find what works for you and mix it up.
So I might use a few different apps and textbooks, read news articles, listen to podcasts, talk with a language partner, and write in a journal.
That's a great idea. When you experience English in different ways, you learn faster.
Now let's talk about something that's important for any kind of learning motivation. How can we stay motivated to learn English, especially when it gets hard?
Staying motivated is so important. One way to do that is to connect with other people who are learning English.
It's always more fun to learn with other people.
You can join online forums, go to language exchange events, or even start a study group with friends. You'll get support encouragement, and you'll be more likely to stay on track.
It's like having a team cheering you on.
Don't forget about intrinsic goals, too. When you're learning for reasons that are important to you, you're more likely to stick with it.
Intrinsic goals are things like wanting to talk to your family in English, get a better job, or just learn more about the world.
Those are really strong motivators. They give you a reason to keep going even when it's tough.
So find your reason for learning English and let that drive you.
As we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought.
What that?
Becoming fluent in English isn't about reaching a finish line. It's a journey. Enjoy the challenges, celebrate your progress, and never stop learning.
I love that. And remember, there are so many amazing resources and opportunities available now. Technology is making it easier and more fun than ever to learn English.
So use those resources, find what works for you, and have fun.
That's all for our deep dive into fluency in English. We hope you learned something new and feel inspired to keep improving.
It's been great talking to you.
We encourage you to keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep pushing yourself to new levels of fluency.
Remember, the world opens up to you when you speak English.
Thanks for listening to Easy English Talks. Don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your friends.